The second one across the top of the mountain. The third and final takes you from Forest Elbow to the checkered flag. And now, at the start-finish line, Paul Radisich commences his critical lap.
And a big roar welcomes him back to the one-lap dash at the mountain. It's the first time in 4 years he's done this one solo. Had a hell of a time here in 2006. He's got a very, very fast car. A highly competitive team, of course.
Always difficult to come out of the gate, one sighting lap, crack the throttle and then put together the ideal lap, and it'll be difficult for team engineers and tyre engineers to take a stab at tyre pressures for this one because of the cloud cover. It's the first time we've seen cloud cover all weekend.
Up through the cutting, he'll be heading towards Grand Dernier very shortly, who can give us a bird's eye view on just how the Toll HSV number 16 car looks.
Oh, it makes the hair stand on the back of your neck. He pushes it right out to the outside towards that grate, which is so famous. Did notice that the shot was pushed right up to the tower. Plenty of smoke. He's on it.
Huge load on the front right-hand corner then, and as you described, it was fully bottomed out as he transited that area, Grant, off the top of Skyline, nicely online for the whole lap so far. Not a lot of air beneath the car at the dipper in second gear. Now they're under Forest Elbow.
Stegbar Mountain Camp.
This is the second sector split coming up. It's a 26.8.
Remember, Radisich's time in qualifying was a 2:08.35.
Everybody tried to rehearse their shootout run in practice 4 earlier today.
Extraordinary speed through the chase.
And he did reach the rev limiter, so he got to 298 Ks. Used second gear at the chase. You heard him upshift.
No incidents to speak of. It looks tidy. What will the time say? 06, 07, 208 point. Well, 360 we've got reading on one monitor. Either way, it's a good time. 208.49 we've got.
It's not a bad number.
They finished 17th last year.
In practice 4 earlier today, very good time, 6th fastest. They did an 8.7. Yesterday, to get into the position of contesting this shootout, he did a 2-minute 8.3. Green flag, he's away.
So the time to catch now is 208.490. That's what Radisich did. The first sector time that he needs to knock off, 51.9. Up Mountain Straight, over the rise. Cat corner, turn 2. Now the elevation begins.
Get our first split in the moment when he exits the cutting. A couple of little stabs of the throttle there at the cutting just to get the nose online before he opened up the throttle percentage again. Very close to the wall on the turn in for the right-hander.
And full commitment over the top two. Such an impressive section of the track. He does go for a dab. Again, tyre smoke. About a 500 PSI push on the brake pedal in this section. Not always necessary. Not everyone does it.
1,000th of a second was the difference between the first sector, between Holdsworth and Radisich.
Oh, picked up a little bit of dirt just off the top of Skyline, and having a bit of trouble getting it turned in. You can hear the front tyre understeering. And when Grant says he's having a dab at the brake pedal just to steady the car and return load to the nose down through the metal grate up there at Reed Park. Second split coming up.
The top of the mountain was a real handful, but it didn't bother him on the times. He's now 0.2 of a second.
Nearly 0.3, in fact, so this is a good run so far.
Relax for a moment, but now into the chase. So quite deceiving, wasn't it? Across the top, car 33 looked like it was had to be muscled left, right, down around Forest Elbow, and now he comes to the final turn. 208.49, he needs to knock off. This will be a good time from Lee Holdsworth. 208.18.
Very good job.
There's Dean Canto and the Gary Rogers Motorsport crew looking on.
And the qualifying is an 8th, so they've been comfortably in the top 10 every time, and both drivers have shown immediate speed as soon as they've saddled up, and straight away on the outlap they've had pace. It seems to be a good car, well balanced this weekend. Charlie and DJ on the pit wall, watching their man blast into turn 1.
He's done this before quite a lot of times. His 8th top 10 appearance here. He has qualified the car in his last 8 starts.
Did a 2-minute 8.0 in qualifying to get into the game. This morning in practice 4 he did an 8.5. Beautifully on line at turn 2, little bit of oversteer on the exit, climbs up on the ripple strip just on that exit. This is where he got in strife earlier, right there. Sounds great, doesn't it?
Roars up the top of the mountain.
And at 200k an hour, it's inspiring when you get this right. It's terrifying when you get it wrong. It's a bit of a Stevie J specialty, but he had 2 goes at the wheel of the apex there. The car a little loose.
Oh, he just about touched the wall. Almost high-fived you on the way through, Grant. He's giving this absolutely everything. He's got 1 red box, but it's only 4/100ths of a second outside the time of Lee Holdsworth.
And as Brad Jones likes to describe it, he had it wriggling across the top of Skyline. Whenever you see the back of the car teetering up there, you know that you found maximum commitment. A little bit of a front brake lock on the left-hand side on the run into Forest Elbow. And look, a tiny margin to Lee Holdsworth at the second split. I wouldn't worry about it. This is going to be very close to a low 8 if he puts the chase together well.
There is nothing in it. We know it's got grunt. The Jim Beam car number 17.
A little unstable at the rear as he went to grab the brake pedal, but he's got that thing in very deep.
And he had to. Stephen Johnson. Has he put it together in the 3rd and final sector? Oh, lock up on the way into the final turn. You saw the front left grab. What did it do? Well, it didn't do him any harm.
Well done, mate. Well done.
Down goes the time.
Well done, mate.
And they take a long, deep breath in the Dick Johnson Racing Garage. And as we've spoken about and heard from the Kiwi himself, it was that lap in 03 that he would love to replicate. Off he goes. Car number 51, the Tasman Motorsport entry of Greg Murphy as our Pentax cam gives you an ideal view.
Been no lower than 7th in any of the sessions this weekend, recorded an 8.0 in qualifying. In the final practice session today, he did an 8.8. Roof cam on the hump in Mountain Straight. Didn't quite make the rev limiter up there in 5th gear, 3rd gear here for turn 2. Murphy, one of 3 drivers who's consistently achieved at Mount Panorama with wins, poles, quick laps. Super strong at this place.
It's a strong pairing too. Jason Richards, his co-driver. A lot of good form, especially around this circuit.
Down 0.2 at the first split. On board now for McPhillamy. Hardly a lift of the throttle to get the car in there. Beautiful stability. It was a little bit crossed up at the cutting. Look at the pace off the top of the hill. 2 wheels as he climbed over the ripple strip. Hustled it off the top of the mountain. Did he get a gain from that? We'll see at the second split at the exit of the elbow.
Takes an enormous amount of guts to do it.
Nice and early on the throttle. Look at that. That was quick over the top of the hill and beautifully early on the throttle, Matthew, as he came off that final corner. If you can get that throttle in just that whisker early, it translates to kilometres an hour down the end here.
It's almost 2.2 of a second, 2/10 quicker than Stephen Johnson.
Very stable as Greg applied the brake into the chase. Huge brake temperature, huge brake pressure. Used a lot of the curbing, a lot of gravel there on the exit. 3rd. 4th, rev limiter in 4th.
What's he done this time? Greg Murphy stops the clock at 2:08.367. Third fastest of the 4 cars that we've had out. 2-time winner of this event. The best he's done in qualifying, you have to go back to 2001 when he put it on the 3rd spot on the grid.
He's the first man to admit that qualifying's not always his favoured caper. Did an 8.8 in the final practice session this morning, but he got into the high 7s in order to take part in this shootout, so we know there's pace there. Both the Stone Brothers cars, the Caltex and Geldwin entries, been pretty strong all weekend. They've been there or thereabouts.
So Stephen Johnson sits on provisional pole at the moment.
Didn't quite get the nose where Russell wanted it to, but that's because he carried a lot of speed into the corner.
Junior's first sector time, 51.9. Ingle will be approaching that mark shortly. Let's see what it is at the first sector. It'll be a red box, a 1/10 of a second.
Very wide out to the wall there. We noticed in the previous session that Greg Murphy was very late on picking up the throttle. Not so much grip on the outside as they try and grab that throttle, although Ingle seemed to find it a little earlier.
And he doesn't mind a bit of dirt biking in his private time, Russell, and he got her out in the dirt off the top at McPhillamy, then very wide through the right-hander. That makes the left-hander at the dipper harder to negotiate. Puts more radius in the corner. He won't be happy with that. Lock brake just turning into Forrest Elbow. That won't have hurt too much. Still reflects that 10th, nearly 2/10ths down. Still not bad on that kind of margin that puts him in the top 3 at the moment. We'll see what happens down the bottom.
41 years of age. It's been 10 years since he's had victory here. 97 with Larry Perkins. This time he's paired with Luke Yulden again, who's already had double success in the feeder series here on the mountain. So Johnson's time is the time to beat the big slide. Big slide. It's all gone horribly wrong for Russell Ingle.
You've got to feel sorry for Russell there to put all that together to get to the last corner and pinch the rear brakes. Just maybe a metre too late.
Okay, mate, can you give us a 4th gear ramp run up Mountain Straight to the limiter and a 5th gear ramp run down Conrod, please? Thanks, Russ.
In pain, Luke Yulden watches it slip by. The Holden fans, though, on the other side of that fence, loved it. The Geldwin Motorsport entry, car 4 of James Courtney. One of the busiest drivers around at the moment.
Some numbers here for you, Matthew, with this diff ratio in the car. Changing out of second, 150 Ks. Changing out of third, 178. Changing out of fourth, 220. And peaking in 5th gear up Mountain Straight here at 260 kilometres an hour. So you break a typical legal speed limit in 1st gear by 16 kilometres an hour. Such is the performance of these cars. And Courtney now up at the cutting, 2nd gear.
Johnson's time is standing the test. James Courtney is the 6th car out, 52.11.
And from fully unloaded suspension to fully weighted in 0.1 of a second, they strong-armed the car. James taking a lot of time, though, to grab that throttle.
And he hopped across the curbing. But Philippi, we saw some awesome pictures yesterday of the thing really dancing. Look how hard he's got to work that wheel across the top of the mountain. And that shot gives you a great indication of the elevation change here. Anybody that's ever driven around this place, they're astonished by the rise and fall of this racetrack and how narrow it is in places.
Literally falls away from under your feet. Courtney has, well, he's bitten into that time a little bit between sectors 1 and 2.
This is a good time. It's a good lap so far from James. Grabbed 6th. Now starts to think very deeply about where he's going to try and hustle the car through the chase at 300 Ks. Let's listen. Short shift 2nd to 3rd, trying to avoid having the car break into oversteer with the back of the car sliding.
This is where it went wrong for his SBR teammate, but this is Cool, calm and very collected from the youngster. James Courtney, fourth, 208.391.
James, fourth so far. A reminder for that fourth gear ramp run out of turn one. Well done, mate. That's a great effort. Good splits there.
Car 888. Your defending champion here. And a two-time pole sitter. He likes to do things a decade apart. Had pole in 95 and 05, one in 96 and 06. His lap is underway.
Lifted his game in the back half of qualifying yesterday to punch out a 2 minute 7.6. In the final session this morning, 2 minutes 8.3. Pretty happy with the run at the end of yesterday.
He goes around turn 2. Brand new BF Falcon this weekend, an educated gamble, they're calling it at Team Vodafone.
Notice that Craig doesn't use all the entry space going into the cutting. He just stays a little shallow of the big bump out there on the right-hand side that caught Stephen Johnson this morning.
And he was the only driver to grab the curve on the approach to McPhillamy. Will he do it again? He doesn't. It takes a brave man in a well-sorted car. It was clean that time. He stayed away from it, and it looks good.
Nicely guided across the top of the mountain so far, and that car really soaking those curbs beautifully, and we saw evidence of that at Sandown as well.
Absolutely scorched through Skyline. Down the S's, through the dipper.
Beautifully online for the run to Forest Elbow, clamped right up against the concrete.
From 0.2 of a second down, he's now 6/100ths in front of Stephen Johnson. He has made it up at the top part of the circuit.
Could this be the first 2 minutes 7 something we see? Car bottomed out on the bump there. Bit of blue smoke from the front tyre in the front guard.
Lowndes is flying. This is a really good time. This man loves the mountain. Is it good enough at the moment? Oh, third. 208.244.
Third at this stage, so good job on those tyres, mate.
Saw him shaking his head
Yeah,
coming
I
off.
saw we lost a bit on the exit there, mate, but good job otherwise, mate. Nice and quick over the mountain.
Car number 2. The Holden Racing Team's Mark Skate. He's done it all, and he wants more. The flying lap is underway. Stephen Johnson is our provisional pole sitter.
Got into qualifying with a 2 minutes 7.4 yesterday, was the third fastest man. In the run this morning, did a 2 minutes 7.9, but was pretty unhappy with the setup. Reverted to much more of yesterday's setup in an effort to have a car that's good for the shootout.
He knows what's coming. 20 starts on the mountain, 5 victories, 5 pole positions. It's an awesome thing to watch Mark Scaife on a flying lap.
Rarely leaves much on the table. Uses every millimetre of track typically in the places that count. Notice he sacrificed some track on the exit of the cutting though to avoid that bump. The gear change from second to third.
My goodness, 0.3 of a second underneath the first split.
If the second half of the lap is like the first, that will definitely be in the sevens. He's a master at squeezing the lemon, this bloke. He just gets every last little bit out of the car. And he's done it for year after year after year.
Sticking like glue.
That was the rev limiter third gear on the brake approach to Forest Elbow.
You can hear the roar. Not only
Look at that.
HRT number 2
Dead
car.
set. That's nearly a second up on Stevie Johnson. That affords you, I mean, he won't be thinking this, but it affords you the opportunity to not go berserk when you get to the chase, and he'll see some of that data on the dashboard.
Are we going underneath 207 territory? Are we heading towards Murphy's amazing time?
He was on the rev limit. Oh, he had to have a second crack at the turn in then. Second gear. One corner to run.
Johnson has held on and held on.
On the rev limiter again in the final corner. Oh, he turned it in on the white line. It slipped a little bit. He's giving nothing away. Millimetres to span. Scaife to the top at 2 minutes 7.1.
Great job, mate. Well done.
What a lap.
I can do.
What another moment.
That's a number.
So with 8 men down, the list reads Scaife at the top. It actually goes Holden forward, Holden forward, Holden forward, Holden forward. And now we've got another Commodore on the track. Garth Tander has control of car number 1.
And has shown great speed all weekend. Practice 2, they were 7th, but in every other session they've either been first or second as a combination, and was tantalisingly close to getting into the 6s on a bunch of occasions. Practice 2, practice 3, practice 4.
30-year-old West Australian, second in the championship. Been an amazing performer in 2007, just racking up race win after race win. He's also got a little bit of revenge on his mind here, because 06, this is where it all came unstuck. First sector time, 51.596. There's nothing in it.
And this is the section, gents, where Scaife was simply breathtaking. He was barely off the throttle whatsoever, certainly the earliest on it, taking Rick just a little bit of extra time, slightly slower than Scaife to grab that, get that full power.
Critical run now, second gear off the top of the hill. Keep to the right here, try and straighten the dipper out. Car, motorcycles for a brief moment on 2 wheels. Perfectly online as Garth turns it into the ideal apex, the point where you cease to enter the corner and begin to exit the corner onto Conrod Straight, the longest straight in Australian motorsport. It's kind of, the sentence doesn't compute, but it's a place where you can relax. Little hint of the rev limiter there in 6th gear, 7,500 RPM. He's 3.5 tenths down at that second critical split as he made it back up under brakes into the chase in the final corner. It's a fair chunk to make.
He was on the money in the first sector, drifted a bit in the second, pushes it wide on the final turn under the bridge. It's second on the sheets.
Good job. P2, Scaife 7.2, new 7.28.
Eric Pender gives him the news. Rick Kelly applauds. First ever top 10 effort at Bathurst behind the wheel. Ominous clouds hovering.
Did a 7.6 in the final practice today. Got into the shootout with a time of 2 minutes 7.1. A great lap. Hasn't been lower than 4th in any session this weekend.
His form lately has just been brilliant. The pole sitter at Sandown.
Brought up a little dirt on the exit of 1 on the crest of the curb there. Both Stephen and Mark have said to me over the weekend they've never driven a better car at Mount Panorama, and they're saying it with real confidence and true conviction.
Classic V8 supercar style. This man can knock Mark Scaife off the top. He can knock a Holden off the top and put a Ford there. This is the final throw of the dice in the top 10 shootout. Wiggles it through the cutting.
That was close. When you bring up the clouds of dust out there, that's close to the wall.
He's using every single piece of the track, and he's got himself a green box. That's the perfect start to the lap.
And it was a very different cutting approach and exit than Mark Scaife's, very different. Used all of the exit space. Mark Winterbottom, I'm talking about Mark Scaife, sacrificed some track there. Now the critical run off the top of the hill.
You've got a 26-year-old behind the wheel. He's trying to mow down the time set by a man who is 14 years older than him, with 5 pole positions already under his belt. This would be an enormous moment. It's drifted a little bit, but it's a split hair of a difference.
He's shaving walls around here. This is a beautiful lap so far from Winterbottom. This sets up a classic finish to the lap.
It will come down to the chase. He'll have to push it through at maximum speed, up to about 300 k's an hour. A white knuckle ride for Mark Winterbottom.
Didn't get it turned in, pinched the rear brakes a bit.
Little bit of an error. Is that enough to open the door for Scapes time and leave it standing? This is it. Around we go. The clock will tell the story. Will Winterbottom get pole position? He does!
Great work, mate. Good job, guys. Good job.
Saves the best till last. And Stephen Richards and FPR.
Fantastic effort, everyone. That's fantastic. Great job, guys. Great job.
They got the #1 spot on the grid for the Bathurst 1000, and these guys should be happy.